All right, it is Sunday, November 13th here in Hershey, Pennsylvania. It's getting colder for the winter. I want to give you an update on what's happening with the build out of the Hershey Country Club. If you haven't, please subscribe to this channel. It might help me someday, maybe buy a few assets that I use to build the golf courses that you love and play on GS Pro. So this week I spent a considerable amount of time still in Blender building one of two of the critical buildings I think are going to make this course. One is the Milton Hershey Mansion, which I did not start this week, but the other one is the Country Club itself. Um, so I'll show you what I did there. I also started the banquet facility. We'll cover that. And I did more work in Inkscape, which is going to be pretty boring to you now, but I'll show my progression there and what I'm doing. So first of all, back into my reconnaissance here, which was going and finding photos of the country club itself. If you remember, here it is. So to get an idea of the colors here, lots of tans, lots of like bluish dark greens here in the trim. This is the back of the building. I wasn't going to spend a lot of time doing too much back here because it's not something a golfer is going to see. This side is also not something the golfer is going to see. This is also the side everyone pulls in, not something a golfer is going to see. This is going to be the critical side though, because this is the warm-up green. This is the path to tee box 1. So you won't see it on tee box 1, but 18 comes right down here and views the building. I'll show you this in a second. Just some foliage. Another shot of the building. These curves are going to be critical as well. And the corner of the building. So I'll show you. Let me show you what happened. Let's go right into Unity. So this is the fairway on the 18th. Again, no foliage or grass yet, and even my textures aren't here, but I brought this finally into Unity, and I kind of what to do is I like to cruise up the fairway and get an idea of what this begins to look like, see if I got the colors right. So here's the water. This would be the 18th green, and then I kind of cruise closer, and you can get an idea of how this ends up looking. I did not put the extent out here. That's kind of a temporary structure. There's a fire pit, which I'll do probably all in Unity with some fencing around it, maybe in Blender, but you get an idea. There's that curved wall. And then the staircase over here, I'll fill in this terrain over here and kind of like slope the terrain into the building, make it look a little natural. There's some sticking out here that'll get fixed. This will have to get flattened to see the patio down here. But you get the idea. I think the colors are pretty close. I'll have to do something with the windows to make those look a little bit more realistic and perhaps reflective. Now you can see the back side of it as well. I'm not too worried about this side, so I made it pretty bland. The stone, I think I got pretty spot on with some of the texturing on the stone. If I go in here closer, you can see the stone. I had some normal maps to it, which gives it a little bit more depth. Maybe I'll round the corners, make them, not so sharp, bevel them, but that just adds to the try count. So what do I mean by the try count? Well, here is this house inside of Blender. It's not as pretty as color-wise in here, but you get the idea. This house is 33,000 triangles, and that's what we really have to be careful performance-wise. So that's about the equivalent, I would say, of like 5 decent trees. So it's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Again, wall was very difficult to do. The curved window, the curves here, the curved stairs, had to do a lot of stuff with arrays. Yeah, so that's the clubhouse. I would say 98% done. Something else that I started this week, if I come back in here into the pictures and move along, is this. It's like a restaurant slash banquet hall. So it's got this big deck around the outside of it. There's one side which is going to be in view. This is kind of some intricate work I'm going to have to do. And then there's the back side. I'm not too concerned about this. And then also if I look in Google Earth, unfortunately it's not coming up for me here, but I did some measurements in Google Earth. Back in here into Blender, here's the start of that building. It's hard to get an idea here. Here's the little pop out. This would be the back side facing away from the golfer. This is the side that I have to do a lot of work on. Patio will come off of here. Won't spend a lot of time here. It's kind of uninteresting at this point, but this is just the base structures. I'm starting to cut it apart so I can do a lot of the columns and the windows. The other thing that I did work on this week was the Inkscape piece where I'm outlining a lot of the golf shapes. So before you saw I had the fairways and the tee boxes and the bunkers done. Well, I've expanded that out a little bit and started tracing out a lot of the cart paths. Cart paths are kind of tricky to do because they need to be flattened out on the terrain and they need to be carved extremely smooth or they look funky. So I use a stroke. It's called a stroke technique on here, and then I convert them to shapes later on. So these are all strokes at the moment, and I'll have two versions. I'll keep the strokes for Photoshop work later on because they're easy to work with. But then I'll convert them to paths to make them into meshes. I know that's probably too much information for you. I also started tracing out some of the wooded areas. So that's these orange areas. And I'll have to do that over here still. I still need to trace out some of those deep wooded areas. I'll start doing some of the parking lots. That'll have to come in later on because I'll have to get some overhead images of the country club building, Milton Hershey building, and all the buildings after they're put in here. I'll import them so I can see them where they're going to sit exactly, because they'll be slightly off from the real one, not much. And then I can trace out the pavement and everything to exact specifications. Deep woods, and then yeah, I'll start doing some like miscellaneous landscaping stuff in here. So I've still got quite a bit of Inkscape work to do. Um, that is it for the week. Have a great week, and hopefully I'll check in next week.